I'm your host, Stephanie Poutz Stevenson. I'm project director for Reinvent the Classroom, and I am joined this evening by co-host Kristen Palazzolo, who's project manager for Reinvent the Classroom, and Stanley Berry, who's the educator engagement associate with Digital Promise. At Digital Promise, our mission is to accelerate innovation in education and improve opportunities for all learners. This means closing the digital learning gap, not only in access, but also in participation and powerful use. Digital Promise invests at the intersection of these stakeholder groups, educators, researchers, and developers, because we know that to realize technology's full potential, we must focus on amplifying human capacity. Educators need every possible tool and resource to engage, motivate, and personalize learning with and for their students. Developers must be informed by education research and be supported by connections with practitioners so that they can design products that solve salient challenges in education and improve student outcomes. And researchers must evolve new methodologies that produce results in a way that match the speed of technology. To accomplish these goals, at Digital Promise, we believe in the power of networks, the sharing of stories from the field, support and investment in research, and engagement in lifelong learning. Our networks bring together education stakeholders in critical conversations about pedagogy and educational equity. One of those networks is our Reinvent the Classroom program. In collaboration with HP, Microsoft, and Intel, Digital Promise brings together educators from across the US and Canada in our HP Learning Studios, HP Spotlight Schools, and in our HP Teaching Fellows. The schools and educators in this network exemplify Digital Promise's principles of powerful learning. These principles are built upon decades of learning sciences research, and they guide educators to design learning experiences that engage the hearts and minds of learners. These are learning experiences that provide students with the opportunities to deeply engage in their learning while using technology in ways that contribute to closing the digital learning gap. Powerful learning means that learning is personal and accessible, that it's authentic and challenging, collaborative and connected, and inquisitive and reflective. And these sets of principles do not work in isolation. They're synergistic and mutually supportive.
In today's webinar, you'll hear how our HP Teaching Fellows are using SEL to transform the learning experience and build meaningful relationships, routines, and resilience. I'd like to introduce elementary school teacher Tara Bova, joining us from Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Hey, Tara. High school teacher Megan Edlifson, joining us from League City, Texas. Hey, Megan. Ninth grade teacher and curriculum coordinator Thomas Rogers from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Hey, how's it going, Thomas? And high school teacher Cecil Hall from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. As we discuss social emotional learning and the HP Teaching Fellows experiences, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions using the Q&A feature of Zoom. This webinar will also be recorded for your future reference and posted to digitalpromise.org.
Can we start off with Tara? How have you created a safe and brave space to foster a sense of belonging at the start of the school year?
One thing that I do, for sure in my classroom is I make sure that my space is set up to help students. So every places are set up for them to be accessible for them and their needs. I have different things like posters on my wall that talks about, their feelings, that helps guide them to be able to name their feelings. One thing that, big with my students this year is a lot of students, this is their first time in school. They missed first grade. They've missed part of kindergarten, and they're just now coming back into the classroom. So we're noticing lots of different behaviors. So I have different spots in my classroom where students can take breaks. I have different tools in the classroom, like thinking putty, and I have like my sand timer, Play-Doh. One student in particular this year, she's really has been struggling with this. And every morning she's been taking like a 3-minute break, getting to use Play-Doh. And this was actually her first day that she came in and started right at work. Just because, it's just a big transition and they're getting in here. There's lots of bright lights. They're seeing lots of different, people that they haven't seen before. So making sure that that space is good for them. Also giving them key times during the day. First thing in that morning, that's a big transition point. right before lunch, when they come back from lunch, and right before we leave for the day are just big times when kids have big feelings. So sometimes making sure your day is set up to help meet some of those like triggering transition points.
I teach high school and I teach electives. And so I have a huge variety of students all day long. And something that I start off every week, or the first week of every school year, is with a note card. And so I've got instructions projected on the board when they walk in. And the very first day, it asks them to write their legal name that I'm going to see on my roll sheet, immediately followed by what they want me to call them, immediately followed by their pronouns, and then a pronunciation guide. Because while Sam and Alice I can pronounce, I have some really amazing names that are a little bit trickier for me. And it's really important to me to get it right. I have a tricky last name. And so I know the feeling you get when someone says it right and they nail it and you're like, yeah, you got it, way to go. And I want them to have that feeling right from the start that I care about them and I care about addressing them correctly, as well as those pronouns, which I'm seeing more and more kids who have big feelings about what they want to be called. And it doesn't matter how I feel about what they want to be called. It matters that they feel seen and valued when, and the least I can do is call them by the way that they want to be called. The following weeks, or the following days, I'll include a question. So the question is just an excuse for me to walk around the room and have little mini interactions with each of them. Because that first week, it's a lot, it's overwhelming. And so I'll spend 10, 15 minutes of the first of every single class that week, just checking in and asking them. My very favorite question I asked this year was, what's an unpopular opinion that you have? And so I'm in Texas. And so I told them, one of my unpopular opinions is that In-N-Out Burger is better than Whataburger, which got them all kinds of riled up and just created a really great, fun moment with them. And then they shared theirs as well. And so it just creates those little micro interactions that really serve us well that first week. And that you can see on the screen, that's what some of the backs of the cards look like and the fronts of the cards.
No, I was just saying, in my case, for the start of the year, I'll address this in a little while, this particular slide in a little while. But at the start of the year, one of the things that has been a challenge for me is that I'm a smooth jazz guy. I love smooth jazz, and that's my kind of music. And so over the summer, what I started to do was to learn a little bit about the other songs. So for example, I understood what that whole concept of Peaches was because I learned it. But I also learned to stay and discovered there's some words in it that I couldn't play at school. So one of the beauty about learning that, when we got back to class as a form of engagement, what I did was to talk about some of the things I did for summer, the fact that I went to Vancouver and that type of thing. But one of the things that came up was I started talking about the songs that were there. And no, some interesting conversation came up. And what I discovered was that it created a connection because we were having these rich conversations. The good thing that happened in the big scheme of thing was that my attendance was about 90% for the first 2 weeks. I'm like, yes, this is so cool because it means that something is happening in the class and the kids are getting excited about it. So that was a piece for me.
So what you are going to see on the screen here is a culmination of a lot of years of trying to get it right. I know that a lot of teachers, especially when they start out, they have the rules and they have the expectations, and those are the first things that they want to get out the door. And for classroom management purposes, there is good reason to do so. One of the things that I did find, though, is one of the most common things that came up in what routines people were establishing was a concept around respect. And respect is actually a very complex idea that is not universally understood, and we make the assumption that it is. So for example, for a student to show respect to their friend, that is a very unique thing. Different groups will show respect to people very, very differently. So rather than having a list of rules, and one of them is often respect, show respect to the teacher, show respect to your, fellow students, I actually kind of broke down, well, what are some of the things that are like very universal that we would want to see in a good student and a good peer. And I came up with this ready to be awesome thing. I have a little bit of a military background, so acronyms are just part of the blood. And I came up with these points here that you can see: being attentive to the speaker, willing to work, try and do my best, engaged in the class activities, supportive of my peers and teachers, open-minded and ready to learn new info, motivated to learn and contribute, and then being empathetic to my community and to those that we encounter. And students seem, in my experience, to really understand and appreciate and relate to this. But more importantly, we talk about, well, what if you have a day where you don't feel like you can be awesome? And rather than make it a punitive thing, to make it a conversation. So I tell students, like, hey, if you can't be awesome during silent reading time at the beginning of class or your first opportunity, raise a hand like you're asking a question and just let me know, hey, Mr. Rogers, I'm not feeling too awesome today. And we can show empathy to them, being like, okay, I don't need the story. Maybe you'll tell me later, maybe you won't, but that tells me what kind of a day you're having. And now I can respond accordingly. Maybe I won't call on you, today, or maybe if I do, I'm going to craft it very, very carefully and make sure that they know that it's coming. Like, there's just so many different ways that I'm now going to approach that student to make things better and to make them feel more comfortable in my classroom.
Our next question is, what are some challenges that you face in our current context when building relationships with learners? And how have you overcome these challenges? And we will start with Tara.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things, especially like last year, and many of us were virtual last year. And last year, that was, I was our only virtual third grade teacher in our entire district. So it was kind of like I was on my own little ship during last year. But now I'm back to second grade. But during this time, it was hard to not just connect with kids, it was also hard to connect with parents. It was just hard making connections because we were all, not with each other. So one thing that I found to be useful is, like I use Dojo, and with Dojo, I'm always sending out messages, sending pictures, telling parents, how they can be involved with their learning, using Flipgrid Shorts to highlight it. I love Flipgrid Shorts because I can not only be talking to them, but I can I can either screen share, or like I've inserted a picture of how to do division last year for sure. And I really walked through it was my anchor chart, and I inserted an image of my anchor chart and walked parents through it. So it makes it helps me to be more accessible for parents and not just explaining things on the phone. That was huge thing for me last year, was like talking with families, getting them to know what to do, and also students as well, having these awesome online resources where I can connect not just with students, but also with families. And I just wanted to add into just with these students this year too, how I had said, many of them haven't even been in school. They ended kindergarten and now they didn't go to first grade and now they're in here. I've always done restorative circles in the morning. That's where we come in, we get in a big circle and we share our feelings and we have a main objective for the day. And one thing that I find to be, it's so vital this year, just letting them go ahead and share how they're feeling, identify that emotion, send those friends well wishes that aren't having such a good day, and how can we make them have a better day. And on top of that is tailoring it to them. So like whatever struggle we're having in the classroom, that's going to be our topic for that day in that restorative circle. And how can we make it better? And constantly reinforcing what we talked about in that morning, that social emotional skill that we had for that morning.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, at least in Canada right now, and where Cecil and I both are, in fact, is that we've had a lot of confusion with pre and hopefully post pandemic restrictions, because ultimately you can't teach a student unless they feel safe. And the pandemic makes that very, very complex. And especially with the situation changing and the information sometimes changing, we have to help our students navigate that. And it's really challenging because their parents are trying to navigate it and we're trying to navigate it. But sometimes as the teacher, you have to put on the face that you actually know what's going on, when in actual fact, you're only a couple minutes ahead of them. But ultimately, what it does come down to is what we do control. And it's often those four walls, that safe space that you create. Your classroom might be the only safe place that one of your students spends all day. And that can be a very sobering thought. One thing that I know that it's definitely changed in my practice over the years is that when the student that falls asleep in your class, if you want to make an actual mind shift, think about that for a second. The student has fallen asleep in your class, but they felt safe enough to fall asleep in your class. And there have been moments where I've seen that student fall asleep in my class, and I know they needed it. So I let them sleep. They're not going to remember, obviously, anything that I taught that day, but at least they knew that I cared to sometimes, if they need it, to give them that moment. The math teacher will wake them up and they can do math, but they might not be able to do that if they don't get what they need. And obviously you do check in with them to make sure that they are okay, but normally I only check in once, and then after that, if their head's back on that desk, and to me, I've actually learned to, in some ways, take that as a compliment that they feel that they can do that in my room.
So something that I've seen in my high school students last year, and even some this year, though things feel like they're back to normal, there's still quite a bit of change from what those seniors were expecting, especially. And so that is what I did last year and again this year is helping them get out of their own head and get out of kind of their mourning for what they have lost in their, kind of respective senior years. And doing that by creating opportunities for them to create magical moments for other students. And so specifically in my fashion design class, the fashion designers collaborated with a first grade class, and the first graders designed monsters, and my fashion design students turned them into actual real adorable little stuffed monsters that they hand sewed themselves and then wrapped them up in gift wrap and I got to deliver them. They didn't get to deliver them this year or last year. But what it did was take them out of their own kind of mourning, which is important, but at the same time, it took them out of that and helped them see that just because they're bummed doesn't mean they can't kind of do something special for those other students. And so it not only allowed them to make something with their hands, but to kind of have the joy of giving and creating magic and joy for somebody else. And for those few weeks that we worked on that project, it really, you could see their excitement. They would come in, oh, I've got to work on this. So, oh, I went and I bought this really special trim because it's just like the trim that the hair that they drew, and I want it to be just perfect for them. And so it was really, really special. And we worked with our audiovisual department, and they actually recorded the process of us building these and actually showed up the day that I got to deliver them. And they edited this beautiful video together. And so my students got to see the joy on their faces. And it was really, really special. And I think it's going to be something that both sets of students are going to remember for a really long time.
I grew up believing that you should do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Now, that sounds reasonable. And as a teacher, I have done that. As a matter of fact, I've often said that I want to teach the students, treat them the way I treat my own kids. But then something kind of hit me, especially during the pandemic period and coming into this year. And what it was whether or not the golden rule is what I need to work with, or what they call the platinum rule, right? And in the platinum rule, I said, do unto others as they would like to be done unto. And the question I kept asking myself, am I teaching my students the way they want to be taught? Now, yes, there's a lot of the conversation around the philosophy of, what is right, what is wrong, all that type of thing. But a little story popped up for me. I have a son and I have a grandson. Now, here's the thing. My son he had to deal with me right from day one. And because of my own background, if Richard need to go take a shower, my response would be, Richard, it's time for you to have your shower. And Richard understood that. But here's the thing, with my grandson, Nolan, that's not how I talk to Nolan. I'd say, Nolan, don't you think it's time to have a shower? And Nolan understands that it's not an option, but he's going to have his shower. Now I'm thinking about that and I'm recognizing that my approach, do unto others as I have them done to me, is what I would have done with Richard. I would speak firmly, Richard, understand that. With Nolan, it's a little different. So the question I've been asking myself was, how do I connect with my students in such a way that I am addressing them in the way they want to be addressed? And therefore learning becomes better because they're understanding it better. So I said to somebody recently, I don't speak Punjabi, but you know something, I've never watched a teacher in that is in that culture teach. And if I understood what that is, maybe some of the students who are my Punjabi students, you know something, maybe I do a better job of that. So for me, the challenge is, how do I make certain that they're connecting, but they are learning? And at the same time, I'm having to challenge some of my own philosophies because maybe I don't have it all right. You know what I'm saying?
So let's move on to our next question. How do you embed social emotional learning into your classroom routines?
Okay, and as I talked about earlier, we start every day, with our restorative circles. So, the image that you're seeing up on the board to the right with the My Feelings chart, you can see how much it's been, because we use that so much. We practice identifying those feelings. We also have, our calming corner space where the students can find, different things that they need to take a break. And just kind of piggybacking off what Thomas said, like that friend I was talking about, who just every morning she just needed 3 minutes of her every morning to start her day off right. If I wouldn't give her those 3 minutes, she exhibits, like bigger behaviors and her being able to do that lets her know she can come in, she can reset her body, she can be present in that moment. And every morning too, we also practice, like different mindfulness techniques as well. So, some of those mindfulness techniques that we practice, I actually have our big ball. And, we take that, we breathe in, we breathe out. One thing the students also really like is if we take our fist up and we'll do it one fist and then we'll do the other fist, we'll do it both fists. So I'll do a pattern. I might take peace sign. Oh, let me do this hand. Peace sign, fist, full hand, pinky finger. And we practice that. And just taking that moment brings us back to that presence, the present moment. Another thing that I really like to do, just to bring us back to that moment is, you look around the room and you concentrate on your 5 senses. So I might have them take 10 seconds just to listen to the close sounds around them. I might give them 10 seconds to listen to farther sounds away. So they might say footsteps outside. What are some things in our room that would be smooth? So just taking that moment, what are some things that we think, we'd go and they'd be bumpy? There's just lots of different types of mindfulness. One of their favorites, especially when I was in person a few years ago, was we count backwards. We go 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1. We do that with our feet, both feet, and then we come back out and we 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, and then do it with both feet. We do, elephant breathing, B breaths. And one thing that I found that's so helpful, because there's so many different mindfulness techniques out there, is to write them down. And I'm actually at my desk right now, so I'm pointing at it, but I have a folder too with all my different types of mindfulness exercises. So I'll pull that out. So we kind of try to mix it up and we try a new mindfulness technique. And I tell the students, this one today may not work for you, but it may work for your friend, because all this social emotional stuff is tailored to you. You got to pick what works for you. Not everything is going to work for another person. So what you need to use, and then next time when you feel we always say flip our lid too. We talk about how, we get to that point and some friends start their day like this. Other friends might start their day like this. We all start at a different point where we might flip our lids. So we need to make sure when we feel like we're getting up here, we need to do one of those, we need to ask for help. Having second graders recognize their feelings and know when they need to ask for help is huge. And that's what we start with day one, because these little people have such big feelings, just built up inside of them. So that's just, and I've talked a lot on that, but I'm very passionate about it. And I think, starting your day off right and using that vocabulary throughout the entire day is huge. Especially with, our growth mindset. I had a friend today say, I can't do this. And I had a friend say, you can't do it yet. So, those are some big things. And when they're using that vocabulary, it's huge. It's not a lesson. SEL is not a lesson. It is your it's your culture of your classroom. So being able to embed it throughout your classroom. And then the other thing too is, we also use lots of different platforms to connect to. So one thing we love to do is to connect with other classrooms around the globe. So, and you'll see on here, it says why go global, because it creates an authentic audience for your students, and it promotes them getting to know different demographics. And like, cause I'm in Southeast Missouri. We don't always, we don't always have as much diversity as we would need. So going ahead and connecting with these different people from different cultures, different classrooms on just a variety of, like, you can do it with math, you can do it with ELA, you can connect it to those standards, but letting them get to know other cultures and getting used to talking to people with different accents, with, different foods they like to eat, is a huge way to let our students also learn about the world around them.
So I think Tara has given us a great example of how to just make this part of your routine. And I think that's really the most important thing, is whatever you do with your students is to make it part of your routine. One of my favorite things to do is when I have students working, whether it's in groups or silently just in their seats, is just going up and down the rows and just really quickly, touching the desk gently so they know that I'm there, and just saying, how's it going? That's the question. And it's a very, very simple question, but they might answer, good, and I can get a vibe. Is it actually good or not? Some will take that opportunity to ask a question that they were maybe not comfortable raising their hand and drawing attention to, oh, he's going to come over here and I don't want anyone to see that. But if you're already there, that's really nice and low key. And sometimes those check-ins are just a moment, but you will have those other moments where you will strike up a conversation, and you just kind of take a knee and you have the conversation. Students that you can actually connect with on a personal level, especially in junior high, that they are seen by you, that's a powerful moment for them. And it's not something that they will forget when push comes to shove later on in the year, when things might get a little bit tricky for them. If they feel seen by you, then any amount of work that you put in to social emotional learning, any amount of time that you've put into it has instantaneously paid off in the now, and probably will pay off in your future.
Well, I feel like I'm cheating a little bit this year when it comes to really connecting with my students. This is something I haven't shared with you guys with the HP Fellows either, but I'm expecting my third child in April, which is very, very exciting. And I got to tell you, if you want to make connections with students, sharing that you are pregnant is a great way to do it. Obviously, it doesn't work for most people, but it's been really joyful to see them excited and ask questions and ask, oh, when is it a boy or a girl? What about, have you thought of names yet? Can we have a gender review? I mean, they're just all in. And I truly feel like it's been like this extra little special connection where they feel like I've let them in on the secret, and they're excited about it. So that's been really special to experience this year, but I know that's not always possible for everybody. The other thing that I wanted to share, and this is absolutely going to be a plug for the classes that I teach. So I teach fashion design and interior design and interpersonal studies. And that all falls under the umbrella of family and consumer sciences, which if you're not familiar with that phrase, you might be familiar with home ec. So we are kind of the updated modern version of that. And so it is literally built into the classes that we teach, like child development, teacher education and training, nutrition and food science classes. All of these classes start with connections, and social emotional learning is just woven in every way, and the standards that we have to teach, it's all woven in there. It's something really special about teaching family consumer science classes and even CTE classes. I know, Cecil, you probably know that as well. And so what you're seeing are a couple of images of students. So the middle one is from a nutrition class. This was when they were at home, and so they got to work on cooking something for their family. you can see a picture of some paper shoes that my students got to design, a dollhouse that they got to put together. And the goal is this year that they're going to build these beautiful dollhouses, and then we're going to donate them to the elementary schools. And they can have those in their library as like a really fun, neat, imaginative space. So I do feel very, very blessed that woven into what I get to do every day is that social emotional learning, especially in interpersonal studies. I mean, that's what that class is. The students came in the first day like, what is this? What are we doing here? And I was like, it's about understanding yourself, understanding other people, and how you live in community with them. And so I get to do that every day, and it's really awesome.
So awesome. And Megan, I just would love if you could share specifically with the cooking, the family connection there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, and I have not gotten to teach those classes, but I work very closely with the teachers that do. And actually I took that class as a student, and the joy of them going home and coming back the next day and say, hey, I made this thing that we did in class. I made it at home and I shared it with my family. It's a beautiful way that we get to connect school and home together, and let parents see really what's going on. Parents like this kind of homework when the kid has to come home and cook dinner for the family, or an assignment I have in fashion when they come home and say, hey, my teacher said I have to do laundry for the family for a week. And the parents are like, yeah, you do. That sounds good. And so not only taking it home, but even taking that into the real world and having a skill that they can bring with them when they go to college, and they can make food in their dorm, or they can do their own laundry in the laundromat downstairs in their dorm or whatever, is empowering. It's really, really empowering for those students, and for those families to see, okay, my kid's going to be okay. They can make 2 dishes, and if that's all they can make, hey, they're going to survive.
Well, part of what we have noticed especially in the high school, sometimes students become somewhat self-centered in a way, and they're not quite sure about all the pieces that comes with them. And so one of the things we looked at, we have been working on this semester, is a whole idea of self-awareness. And to kind of jump into that, what we did a character assessment, character strength assessment. So I got the kids to do a survey around an assessment of what their character strengths were. And what we discovered was that at the end of it, what they did was that they have sent me their top 5. So they sent me their top 5 strengths. And then after we've done that, I asked them to do a test. I don't know if you've ever heard about the friend exercise, where a question you ask is, why are you my friend? What about me that make you want to be my friend? And very often people would say, well, you're nice, and you start to, as you listen to that, you're hearing things, what a good friend is. So you jump in again, and the kids were asked to do this again, and they would ask, so what about me? What is it about me that makes me a good friend? And again, something like that might happen. And maybe 2 or 3 more times they would ask that same question. And eventually you'll hear people say, when I'm with you, I feel. When I'm with you, you make me feel this way. And so what we started to do, what they did was they had to list those pieces. And then we took the character strengths, and then we took the pieces around what their friends say about them. And all of a sudden, I started to ask them, did you feel surprised? Did any of this surprise you? And man was saying, I didn't realize that's what I do to people. And what started to happen in our case is that students start to become more aware of how things are working as they connect with other people. The interesting thing, though, as we talk about this, is that we start to ask them, okay, each week I'd like you to practice one of these. Be intentional about one of these particular strengths. And what we're seeing, this is what made me, I'm kind of feeling goosebumps right now. They start to care more about each other than they've ever been. I see things, when there's a need, students will get up and help without being asked. And I'm sitting back, I'm like, are these the same people I had last year? Are these the same people, and that just makes it so exciting. And well, as I said, we took the top 4, and having taken that, we're working through that, and we're hoping that over the next couple of months, we may be able to pop another couple of these strengths and see how they embody them, how they live them, how they, I guess from a business perspective, we say how they operationalize these character strengths.
On to some wonderful good stuff here. My favorite stuff. What technologies and digital learning resources have aided in meeting the needs of your learners? And how do those resources benefit their social emotional learning?
One of my favorite resources is definitely, Epic and Flipgrid. So one thing that's super cool about Flipgrid is there are pre-made resources in there for you. It takes so much of that prep work out of it. You just go to that discovery library there. You can go to social emotional and there are things there for you. And actually a lot of the Epic books are linked on there and you already, app smashed for you. You don't have to do anything. You just go in, you find them, and these are just great talking points for kids. And when we were virtual, and I just recently had my full class quarantined, these were actually great ways for me to send out. We could talk to each other. We could, these kids could still see each other. They could still communicate with each other. They still got to hear their friends' voices. So I love the Epic and and Flipgrid and just how Flipgrid has that discovery library. Another thing that I really like to use too is Forest Connect, which is on that the next slide. Is there's a video, I like using video formatting that so we send out, I use a video tool, and this is a video we create every year whenever we are connecting with schools across the globe. This is how they learn about our classroom and learn about where we're from ahead of time. So I always send whoever we're connecting with a little video about our school, the where we live, and then they get to hear us and see us. So the teacher can kind of prep and get to know us more and about, our culture and what's around us as well. And I do want to say I'm our social media manager for our school. And one thing I have found too is using like a video social media platform and getting teachers active on that also gets parents to see us, in a new light. Does that make sense? Putting that out there and using these different forms of video and social media help us to, just connect with parents and families in our community in new ways too, that kind of help out when we're connecting or calling and talking with them too. So I just wanted to add that in there too.
So the biggest change that I've kind of walked our school through, I would say in the last 2 years, is actually the move to bring your own device. Prior to this, our school had maybe about, I'm going to say 220 school-owned devices, varying ages and condition. And we noticed two things. They were never where they needed to be, and they were never all in one piece. And when COVID occurred, we obviously had students learning remotely. And to facilitate that, what we did is we tore down the carts and we gave these devices out to any student that needed one, kind of as a loaner, like we would a textbook. And we saw that this was good. And what we then did just this past year is we continued that. And we said, okay, if you are able to purchase a device, here are the requirements that we have at the school for it. And it's very, very reasonable. It's like, it's got to have the keyboard, a microphone, web camera, all day battery life, that sort of thing. And if you are able to cover that cost yourself, then obviously you own the device and all that. And then we kept all of the carts torn down and we continued to issue out those devices as loaners. And we found two things. Three actually. The first is the move going entirely digital saved the school about $9,000 to $10,000 in photocopying. The second thing is that we no longer had any issues of vandalism because the student had the device. If it breaks, we know who broke it. It wasn't the case of, the teacher, was really, really busy. They get the cart in from the last class, they open it up and half the keys are missing on one of the devices. That's no longer occurring. But the most important thing is it creates digital equity. Every student has access to the technology on demand. And that has been a very game-changing opportunity for all the staff in our building. And, you know, there's different comfort levels with it, but it has helped kind of raise the standard, I think, overall. And it's really, I think, benefited some of our high flyers that, you know, if they had a device in the hands of a student, you know, at any point during the day that they required it, the things that they could do. And we said, okay, well, here it is, do it. And it's been phenomenal. And I would recommend it to any school that's capable. If you look at your demographics and you think, okay, with the devices that we have and with the community that we have, if we tore down our carts, could we do a BYOD and essentially make our school one-to-one? It's transformative. And I don't use that word lightly.
Yes, absolutely. So I want you to look at these pictures as you're scrolling. These are from my interior design class. I just completed these about a week ago. And I want you to think to yourself, what program you think my students used to create this? And you might guess. Actually, if you want to guess, you can go ahead and put that in the chat, what you thought. The reality is this is all done in PowerPoint. And I think that is amazing. I think PowerPoint is this magical graphic design tool that has so many possibilities that nobody knows about. And so this is actually just my third year teaching. I came from what we say in CTE, I came from industry. And when I worked in my previous career, I did a ton of work with PowerPoint and I learned all these amazing skills. And so I actually put together an 8-unit PowerPoint tutorial that takes my students about a week to work through. And we work on a different skill every day and they do some practices and it culminates with this project where they create and design their dream bedroom. And so they pull images, they remove backgrounds, they change colors, they duplicate, they learn how to use the eyedropper tool, which if you don't know the eyedropper tool, you put that in Q&A and I'll tell you how to do it. It's magical. To select custom colors and they build these rooms. And one, it's just a really fun project, but two, they're like, oh, I don't just have to use the PowerPoint templates. And I'm like, goodness, no, let's break away. Those templates are great, but I've seen them a million times. Let's break away. And they're like, oh, I can do some really cool stuff with this. And I mean, you can see this work is fantastic. It truly blew me away, the work that they did this year. I have students that say, oh yeah, I was in my English class and we had to put together a brochure and I showed my table mates how to do this cool trick, how to pick the custom color. Or my mom was working at a PowerPoint at home for this presentation for her work and I showed her how to change the color of an image so that it fit better or whatever. And for them to have those little tingly realization moments like, oh, I can be really good at this. I know how to do these cool tricks. And all it takes is PowerPoint, who like everybody in the world has access to, and every business uses, and all that is really pretty exciting. And it doesn't take any special software. It doesn't take a special computer. They have it there at their fingertips. And I think that's really cool. And I'm just watching these now, I'm like, wow, it just blows me away. So sorry, proud teacher moment.
Okay, now one of the dreams I had when I was selected to be a part of this group was the idea that you guys would have some new things that you'd send my way that I can use in my classroom and all that type of thing. Now, I teach financial management. Now, for a lot of people, they go, boring. So you're always looking for ways to make something happen. And what was interesting was when I did this Wordle thing, I discovered that there were so many variations of this that I could do. And that kind of excited me. But there's something else that has been exciting me. You know, you guys have taught me to use Wonder there's some little firewall issues at my school, but boy, it is the coolest thing ever. Watching kids not having to physically get up to go to where they need to go, that has just been kind of cool. And Mark, when I've had to bring my class back because sometimes students get a little too excited about that. So that is one piece. And the other thing that that has been working for me, I haven't gone too great in it yet, but I'm working through it. And it's that video ask. Dang, that's a cool tool. First of all, It's very specific. It's not like and a kid can use their phone to do it. It's easy, it's personal, and man, you should see, rather than my students having to write the answers, they can tell me it, and I can assess it right there and then without much, oh, I am just loving this. So guys, keep that thing coming. I'm just getting more excited every day. So thank you.
So when students believe that they are worthy and capable of overcoming challenges, they become resilient. How do you cultivate resilience in your classroom? Tara?
I think the first thing for sure is creating that safe space to make mistakes. So like having that growth mindset. And two is making sure your students celebrate their success. So I start every year, we make sure that we celebrate each other. Someone does a great job, we may give them the chef's kiss. Mwah, mwah, mwah. We clap for them. You know, we do golf claps. We have them, you know, we just celebrate them in so many different ways. We do great, 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 or that answer was hot, and we go. So we make sure that we're constantly celebrating each other. We know we like our students, my students often know, like if they see a friend struggling, it's okay. After they're done and they get that answer, we celebrate them. I know one thing, one memory that I have is when I started teaching with this other friend of mine, that she was just amazed whenever, you know, my students would go to her classroom and someone might be struggling while reading. Well, they'd be like, you got this, you can do this. And then as soon as that friend, you know, mastered it, they would celebrate her. They never did it in a way that was intrusive because we practice it so much. You know, we always made sure, you know, 1, 2, 3, that's enough. But they really get into it, and knowing that your classroom is a safe space, that our classroom is a community. We are in it together. We want to make sure that we celebrate each other. Another thing too is not just having us, you know, celebrate each other in our classroom, but having our school celebrate us. So a lot of times we'll make Flipgrids too with classrooms just across the hall. And we did like Map Buddy. So our students, like 4th graders, will celebrate my 2nd graders and their achievements. We might read stories to them, writings to them, and we'll do that with the 3rd graders. Then we also do this with the 1st graders, and we will you know, read to them and practice having good quality feedback with those students. So just making sure that we are you know, we are involved with our school community as well, not just our own classroom community, but knowing that Blanchard as a whole, our school, is a place where we celebrate everyone in their individuality.
Maybe it's just my background and previous experience. However, I've always found that resilience is normally something that goes hand in hand with challenges and trials. It is very, very difficult to be resilient when it's never been tested. And a lot of students, especially in junior high, in my experience, one of the best things that we can do as educators is acknowledge that that's indeed what it was. Sometimes it's very, very easy to brush something off and saying, look, you think you have trouble, you don't. But you need to understand, to them, that is trouble. In their world, that is everything. And you need to start by acknowledging that, even if in the grand scheme of things, we might not necessarily think it is as big as it is, but for them it is. But to get them to move beyond that, we need to ask them, well, how can you use what you've experienced? How can you actually take that experience, positive, negative, or maybe even a net neutral, to not only help yourself in the future, but maybe how you can help someone else. And that is a very powerful thing for a student to be able to do, is not only to think about, okay, you know, maybe I can help myself, maybe I can't, but can I actually help someone else that might have had that happen to them? And that's actually a way to kind of vicariously build that resilience.
Absolutely. So this actually goes along with the PowerPoint project that I just talked about. I asked my students, we had 1 day left in the project. And so while they were still a little bit kind of finalizing their details, I had them submit an image to Padlet. And we spent some time talking about giving feedback. And so we talked about positive feedback. We talked about constructive feedback. We talked about how to receive that feedback, that it comes from a helpful place. We talked about how to give that and come from a respectful place. And then I gave them the opportunity to choose several of the rooms and to provide feedback for their classmates. And it was great practice for them. It was great for them to understand that when I'm walking around the classroom and giving feedback, that it comes from a place of just trying to help and make their design better and to challenge them and push them. But what I didn't anticipate and was really exciting to see was when they would go back and read that feedback. Oh, they really liked that I did this, or they thought my room was really cool, or they complimented me on this choice. So there was also that really, really great effect of them getting that feedback from peers, which was really, really special to see as well.
One thing I've discovered is that we all, at any given time, we can experience different elements of the weather. For example, on the mornings when I walk into my classroom and it's a sunshine, beautiful day, everybody around me sort of behave like it's sunny and shiny. Oh, I discover my weather forecast impacts others. And so that is one of the things I model. And in modeling it, I'm watching all my students are doing the same. The good news is that if I walk in and it has not been a good day, I need to be vulnerable to say, hey, today is not a good one. The day hasn't been going well. Do you know what I notice when I do that? My students start to behave in different ways, in very positive ways to help me out. So I'm thinking that whole idea of modeling your personal weather forecast is huge. And watching students mimicking that is also a beautiful thing to see.
So now we're going into the next question. How have you built authentic partnerships with families and empowered families as learning partners? And you all have touched on this a bit already. Tara, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah. So one thing for sure is just constantly connecting with them. One thing I have on here too is incorporating them by giving them, I'll give them a little survey of how they feel like what's going, what would be something that would be helpful to them, especially when you're virtual. Like, we don't know these family situations, their struggles, what they're going through, what's healthy for their home life. So we having them let me know like what's going to work for them, giving them options too, being able to give them forms of information in lots of different ways. And also like my picture of my little BB there, she's, but sharing personal things like that with them sees you as more as just than that. A lot of these families, I feel like sometimes the school is the authority figure, and some people have had issues with the school environment. So breaking down those barriers and letting them see me for a person just like them, a mama just like them, knowing that I love and care for their babies, giving them this a little bit of my home life and seeing me in that light, kind of gives us our own special bond too. And like I said, being open to their ideas and their input in their child's education.
I think one of the things that can sometimes happen, and this will be different depending on what divisions or districts you're a part of, is not to be afraid to access community supports for the students in your building that need them. For example, in our school right now, we have a partnership with a local organization that provides the school with what we call a success coach. And they are that voice that's not an administrator, not a teacher, but just a good person to talk to that is trained in what they need to be trained in. And we as teachers, we're very, very good and we will do what is necessary. But at the end of the day, we are not those working professionals. And sometimes those students that are in real need and those families that are in real need do need those real supports. So if you're in a position where you are that person that kind of coordinates those supports for the school, it's absolutely essential sometimes that they get that support, but they get it through the school because they trust the school already. And they trust that what you're providing them is going to help them. If it just comes from the outside, from a source that they don't really trust, they're not going to take advantage of it. And that's something that we've seen in the past.
So what you're seeing on the screen is an Instagram account that is run by myself and two of my colleagues on our campus, all within our Family Consumer Science department. And we kind of think of it as like our own, like our fridge at home, where we put exciting things that we've been working on in the classroom, fun photos, and it's just kind of like our way to brag and show off and celebrate our students. And so we all three have access to it, so we're always posting different things and sharing. We use it for announcements and some stuff as well, but it's great because it reaches students and gives them that tangible look, like, look, we're really proud of you. We shared this because we're really proud of what you did and how hard you worked. And we'll also put some teacher pictures in there as well, just to, again, kind of show that humanity and that we're people too, and that we're excited to be there because they can feel that. They know that we're excited to be there for them and spend that time with them.
Oh, can you see the lanyard? We have a lanyard in our school. And by the way, this is supposed to be a problem. Kids don't like to wear it. So the only way you can get kids to wear it is not to be a pain. So my favorite thing right now in terms of building partnership is that when a student is not wearing his or her lanyard and they're coming down the hall, two things happen. One of them is that they would see me and they would go like this. So they're checking if they have it. That's the first thing. And then the other one, for those kids who kind of are not aware, I'd go like, I'm going to dance. And they walk up to me and I said, I'm not here for a dance. What do you think I'm here for? And they would say, oh, darn, I don't have my lanyard on. It's the coolest thing to watch that process happening. But what we discover is that the kids are, when we check, and we have had instances where this has come up, the school I'm at, authentic relationships is extremely important. But what we have found is that sometimes we'll hear parents in the drive. By the way, I do parking too. I do the directing of traffic. Parents will say, hi, Mr. Hall. Johnny said you were blah, blah in a positive way the other day. And I'm like, dang, you even know. It's so cool. But the idea behind it is being yourself, but at the same time, be caring in the process.
Mr. Hall is a celebrity out there. And it is because you are building those authentic relationships with them. And it's good to be noticed for that. Thank you for sharing. You all had such wonderful and valuable things to share with our audience, and the social emotional experiences that you've shared hopefully are put to use, and we can see more future practices of social emotional learning out in the world. Stephanie is going to lead us into micro-credentials.
So yeah, we just want to point out that we do, Digital Promise does have micro-credentials related to social emotional learning, and micro-credentials provide educators with recognition for the skills that they're developing throughout their careers. So we'll put that micro-credential link in the chat if you are interested in learning more about that in terms of how to continue your professional learning. And we also invite you to keep this conversation going with us. We are having a Twitter chat on September 29th at 7 p.m. on this same topic, and we invite you to join our presenters and other HP Teaching Fellows as we share more ideas for creating powerful learning experiences. And if you would like to learn more about the Teaching Fellows, Kristen's going to put a link in the chat where you can sign up for our mailing list so that you can learn more. I just want to close by thanking everyone who attended. I'm going to give a special thank you to our partners at HP, Microsoft, and Intel for sponsoring this webinar, and for Charlie Radman and Betty Garcia Hill with HP for all of their support in hosting this webinar. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.